is Identity at the Center.
Welcome to the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm Jeff, and that's Jim. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Oh, not so bad. Yourself?
Doing great. You know, every once in a while we get a company that is perfectly game for our space. And today is that day on the Identity at the Center podcast.
Yeah, we've got a sponsored episode today. So these are things that we do from time to time with our friends in the industry. Today we've got Hush.Security. They are just coming out of stealth, I believe, is how we're kind of looking at this. And we're going to talk with Micha, Rave in a second. But to learn more information about them, you can visit hush.security/idac. But let's get Micha on here. So Micha Rave, he is the co-founder and CEO at Hush.Security. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, hi guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. So this is the first time we've had an opportunity to talk with you on the podcast. So let's start with a little bit with your background. How did you get into the identity and access management space?
Well, my background, we're going way back. I was, a computer kid. I spent a lot of time with computers as growing up. This was my passion for a very long time. I did some work in this, and of course studied in college computer science and electrical science, and went into the industry, right then. I've done a lot of development roles in my career, and then finally moved to product management around 2010. Did some virtualization stuff, some cybersecurity, and eventually I kind of landed with a very, unique team somewhere around the late 2016. There's a company called Meta Networks, and I met a lot of great peers. We did a very good run with the company. We kind of pioneered ZTNA, so Zero Trust Network Access, before that term kind of went popular, before SSE and SASE, which later came from Gartner. We had a very good run, and the company was acquired 3 years after. And when we got acquired, we had a very good hygiene around security and very good security by design nature. But the InfoSec, the company that kind of acquired us, wanted us to rotate a lot of our keys, and basically every key that we have, around 2 times or 3 times per year. And the problem is that even if you have a very good, infrastructure with code and automation and hygiene around it, rotating keys is always a very, very big problem. And it always kind of get pushed to the last Friday of the last week of the last month of the last quarter that you're actually allowed to do so. And then you spend the night doing that and hoping that everything kind of went well, because there was no tooling around that to make sure that, you're doing it correctly. And so when we kind of thought about moving out again, the same team and the same people, this was one of the biggest problems that was still resonating, kind of sitting as a chip on our shoulder from the last interaction. And we said, okay, this needs to be addressed. And so we kind of looked at what other, vendors and startups and incumbents were doing in the field. And we didn't find any good solution that can give you the governance and the visibility and basically the operability that these fields deserve.
So I love the idea of hope and prayer and wishes as a security strategy when it comes to rotating keys. Everybody seems to fall into that trap at some point. So you kind of mentioned how, Hush kind of positions itself a little bit. How did you come up with the name of the company?
So as we deal with identity and basically with secrets, and so Hush was kind of a pun on, we're making the secrets go away. So kind of Hush, it's a kind of a playful way of talking about it. Took us a while to get there, but we were very happy when we struck that one.
And most importantly, the URL was available, right? So hush.security is a great URL to have.
Available for the right price, obviously, but yes.
So I think I mentioned, early on that you guys are just kind of coming out of stealth. Did I get that right? Because I think you guys are a little bit relatively new to the scene. Maybe it's not kind of right away, but tell me a little bit about that journey coming, coming out to the public and saying, hey, here we are and here's what we do.
Yeah, so we've been working, for a year now on this product, which is disruptive. I think it's very unique in the industry. There hasn't been a platform that or solution that is doing what Hush is doing. And so we were excited a bit to keep it a secret at the beginning, but then later on, we really wanted to kind of brag and tell the industry and the world what we're doing, and that there is a way to do things differently, which actually makes security people happy and operation people happy, which is very rarely the case. And so, yeah, we did come out of stealth, launched the product and the company a week ago. A lot of fanfare, and we're happy and excited for the next chapter.
So, Micha, we hear that term stealth all the time. Can you kind of explain to me what it meant to be in stealth? Does that mean that you guys didn't have customers that you're working with, or like you're building the product? What does stealth mean?
It means a lot of things, but for us, it means that we didn't want to tell yet what we're doing and the novel way that we approach things. So first of all, we did a patent. We still have a patent pending for the way that we address identity for machines. And then there was a lot of competition in the space, and a lot of them are kind of, in my mind, they are kind of missing the target. They are doing a very tactical thing, a very short-sighted thing that can help in the short term, but thinking about how to reduce the technical debt and how to go into a better approach. And this is something no one has done yet, and so we kind of wanted to keep that hush for some time. And then once the product is ready to go out with a bang, in the meantime, that doesn't mean that we can acquire customers. We do have 4 paying customers and several more, on our pipelines, and now we can actually expand, the go-to-market, and this is exactly what this launch is about.
Well, I'm biased, but this is a great way to launch anything. Is coming out of the podcast, so you have thousands of people that are kind of tuning in for this. I'm going to put my jaded CISO hat on here, and you mentioned the competition. There's a lot of products in the IAM space, and the hard question that I always like to ask is, so what makes you guys special? Like, what is it that you think sets Hush apart from others that are looking to approach either the same or maybe similar problems in the space?
So I think, first of all, most other vendors addresses visibility only, right? And so this is very important, definitely for CISOs in a lot of companies. They want to understand first and see where the problem is, where the bodies are buried, so to speak. But then the next part of that is that you actually need to remediate that. So if your solution, is the one that opens 500 Jira tickets, this is not what CISOs are actually looking for. So the first thing that sets us apart is that we are looking for remediation or prevention of those problems, right? Not only to show them. We do have a comprehensive way of discoverable and visibility, but what we are looking for strategically is to change the way that things are done and to help our customers basically avoid those problems, right? You can think, other companies have done that in the past. For example, CrowdStrike and SentinelOne developing an EDR, writing, then building a better antivirus, right? So a jump or, just shifting the way that the solution is being done can yield much better result. And I think strategically, this is exactly what Hush is going to do. The other side, the other part of the vendors that we are actually competing against is in a way the vaults provider, right? The one that actually was safeguarding the secrets up until now, but the secrets have grown in such a scale that vaults are not keeping up with that pace. The era where static secrets were, few and the rotations were very far apart are long gone. And with the scale that we have today, definitely with agentic kind of coming in and tearing through the roof of that, we need a better solution, and one that addresses the scale and is future-proof.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought that part up about the vaults. I mean, like I said in the intro, I love the name Hush Security. And when I first heard about it and that you guys are taking on secretless access management, I thought this is totally like in that space of managing secrets vaults or getting a new twist on it. But I also thought this sounds like a play on non-human identities. And I'm wondering if those kind of get confounded, what you guys are doing with the secretless access management and non-human identities. And if they do get confounded, what is the difference between those two?
It's a good question. I think the term non-human identities is kind of somewhat abstract and a little confusing, but the idea behind it is basically static keys that machines use when they authenticate or create trust with other machines, right? And so every time one machine needs to talk to another, definitely if it's not in the same namespace or even in the same data center or physically or virtually, it needs to establish some kind of trust. And this trust, there are many ways to do that. Typically an API key or a certificate or a username password and so forth. So I think the term NHI kind of refers to all of those, but there is a confusing element to it because it talks about identities as well, and secrets are not always identities. Sometimes there's the identity of the machine, which is one thing, and then there's a secret, which is another. So I'm a little bit resenting that term, but it's accepted in the industry. And for me, it talks about basically legacy static keys, enabling machine to talk to another machine.
Yeah, I definitely hope I didn't offend you with that comparison, but I think the non-human identities is a good umbrella term. It incorporates a lot of things. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at, which is what is the problem that your clients are trying to solve? And I'm wondering, with that description, are there certain types of clients that use this? So in other words, organizations do a lot of custom development, or can you use this with prepackaged software as well?
Basically, there are a lot of approaches that you can take in order to, improve your posture with regard to non-human identities. But there are no good tools that takes you all the way. So there are kind of these separate places where you can kind of improve a certain element of what you do. But up until now, there are no tools to do it. The vaults, themselves, they become a little smarter over time, so they can do some more things. They can give you more auditability and so forth. The NHI, visibility has become a little better. It's not perfect yet, but it is getting there. But eventually, the work to actually, in the case of legacy stuff, right? So where you need to go into a better solution. For example, when you work in a cloud-native environment, like let's say AWS, you're using IAM roles, you're using policy to manage access and trust between machines. And that works great. It has been working for, I think, more than a decade in the same way. But when you're getting outside of AWS, right, you have a workload in AWS that needs to talk to a SaaS, for example, that system doesn't apply anymore. And so you're stuck with this kind of legacy way of doing it. And today there are no good tools that can help you do that without breaking the legacy world. I think there has been several attempts to do so. For example, SPIFFE is one of the standards that is trying to kind of make a revolution here. But I believe that SPIFFE is not yet backed by enough. Sorry, it's not backed by yet enough big players in the ecosystem, and there is not enough momentum behind it. And so if someone can take the elements of SPIFFE and the principle of it and apply it in a way that doesn't break your code and your business, then I think this is exactly what we're trying to build and what needs to be built.
It's interesting because a lot of what you're saying and SPIFFE's, I think back to our episode with Felix Gatens, and he just came on to talk a lot about different approaches for machine identities in the authentication space and SPIFFE, and that's kind of a cross-cloud platform, whereas what you have is a lot of proprietary solutions. I think that Google's solution for vaulting is based on SPIFFE, but for the most part, it's proprietary solutions. You guys are approaching it differently, and you're also taking on the on-premise to software as a service, which I think should be kind of clear to everybody. Like that's a problem that, how are you solving it today, right? Unless you're kind of building your own solution, it's pretty hard to solve. So I'm kind of thinking that I might have answered my own question from the next question, but it's why is this hitting now? Why are people trying to solve this problem now? It seems like the problem's been around forever, right? So why is it coming home to roost?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question. We've been using, API keys and secrets and NHI basically since the invention of software in a way. The issue with that is that when we used to work in monolithic, on-prem, that was manageable. It was very few of those because all the software was kind of packed neatly together, and trust between those components were inferred or assumed. But as we kind of transform to the cloud, right, and if now software is physically and virtually in different places in the world, now you need to establish trust between them. And so we needed a lot more of those NHIs. And if you take into consideration that after that came the infrastructure as code and the automation kind of revolution, then all of those are scripts and tools that needs even more of those keying and artifacts. And so it kind of grew dramatically back then. And now, as we discussed before, we are entering the agentic area, and agentic, by definition, need a lot of very, very wide access into everything, such as your data center, your cloud, and so forth. And so we are on the verge of another very, very big surge in this thing. And I think this is why now is the time that companies and vendors and analysts are kind of saying, okay, this is, it's going to break very, very soon, if it hasn't broken already. And look, for example, just what happened with this Sales Loft Drift incident that happened just a few weeks ago. The company was able to exfiltrate Sales Loft AWS account, and from there they extracted OOs, which is basically another type of NHI, is a kind of a static key, and they stole 700 of those from everyone in the industry. And I'm talking about, titans as well as small companies like Palo Alto and Cloudflare and a lot of others, which has a very good security-minded product. So you can say that, this is something that, like an oversight of something like that. It's a proof that the architecture and the system is completely broken, right? So the proof is that someone broke all the big security companies in the world, and that means that the architecture is failing us. So we need to move into something that works a little better.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great points that you're bringing up. Thinking from the practitioner's perspective, I'm wondering, it almost sounds like the case is being made that obviously there's a transition period, but is the case that I won't need a separate secrets vault in the future if I'm going down this hush route? Do I eventually just eliminate the secrets vault?
I think that's a very good assumption, right? So, as I said, look at what happened. I think it's a very good example and a very good metaphor. Look what happens in the human space, right? When I want to access Salesforce today, my company Salesforce, 10 years ago, I used to go to my admin, he would create a username and password for me in Salesforce. He would send that to me, which is, something that is risky, because how do you send that? Through an email, through an SMS, through whatever means. That's the first risk. And then it's my responsibility was to keep those username and password, presumably in one of those password, manager that we used to have, like OnePass or LastPass or and so forth. And hopefully that is enough. But today, the situation is completely different. When I want to access Salesforce, I'm asking my admin, and he's putting forth a policy saying Micha can access Salesforce. And the only thing I need to do is go to Salesforce and just log in with my IDP, whether it's Google or Okta or Ping or Entra or Microsoft. And so this is exactly the kind of path we want to take the machine access through. We want to write policies rather than deal with taking a key, sending it to engineering, putting that in a vault, and pulling it out of the vault when we need it. So yes, so in my vision, in my view of the world, when you're using a system similar to what we're developing, you don't need the vaults anymore.
We had Darren Rolls on the podcast recently, and he talked about, for the big incumbent firms, they're not as motivated to innovate. I think what I'm hearing about from you is like true innovation, potentially shaking up the industry. I think this story resonates really well with practitioners architects, technology leaders, as they kind of understand, well, this is a game changer, they'll get on board. It's a little bit of a different sell as you move up the chain of command within organizations. You get to that C-suite and, the people who hold on to the budget, if you will. So I think that's one of the things that with your prospective clients, you're really going to have to help make that case. And have you already thought through that problem? I mean, what is the business case that you coach your prospective clients through to make to people who are not the techies, who are not hands-on and in love with the technology?
I think eventually the thing that resonates most well with those guys is the value that you bring to them, right? They will not do anything that doesn't hold a very good value for the company and for the way they work. So if we can reduce the risk for them, reduce the labor that they need to do, reduce the cost of ownership for managing vaults and for managing the processes around those things, managing access reviews and so many other things. If we can just reduce that and produce that in a very simple, automated and visible way, I think this is where they're gonna bite in, right? Because it will resonate because of the great values that the product brings to the table.
So it's one thing to get the executive buy-in. Great, now I've got it. How does this thing work? How does the platform go about identifying these machine accounts and setting up whatever it is, if it's a graph database or some other thing, right? To say, okay, here's all the accounts that exist in the environment. That's the visibility part of it. But how does this actually work? How do you go about collecting that information from someone's environment?
Right. So we have multiple ways of doing that. The first of which, and then the most trivial one that is just actually used by other vendors as well, is that we basically connect with APIs to our customers' infrastructure, to our code repositories, to their SASs. We scan and we read everything that we can, the metadata about the non-human identities or the secrets and the keys that they have there. So we get that, and that brings us the initial kind of a database or inventory of what we have. That stage on its own, it's mandatory part of the journey, but it's definitely not the last, because first of all, there is a lot of noise around this, or a lot of stuff that we scan that is not relevant for our customers. And then the second thing is that if you read only the stuff that you know about, then by definition, you are missing all the stuff that you don't know about, right? And so to that end, we develop a set of runtime technology sensors, very lightweight, that we can deploy with our customers. And that gives us observability of every authentication and every interaction between machine that happens within the customer environment, whether it's cloud or on-prem and so forth. And so that is the first step for us. It's first to understand the world, the universe of NHIs for the customer, produce a report from that. First of all, a comprehensive audit log, and second of all, a posture for each one of them, so the customers can address the critical stuff that they have. And this is for us only the beginning, because this will allow us to kind of transform this customer into a policy-based approach. So we take that, we do the mapping, right? We do the baselining of everything that they have. And then we can move that into a policy-based approach where the customer only manages from this point and on, only manages policies rather than secrets.
So it sounds like the end goal here is to get that inventory, whether it's on-prem or cloud, I'm assuming, and then turn to PBAC, right? Policy-based access controls through that. Are there other methods of access control that maybe apply here? Can we use things like attributes? I don't know if I wouldn't want to go role-based. I would wish that on my worst enemy, but help me. How configurable or how flexible is the model to say, policies are good for this, but maybe there are certain machine accounts or machine identities or whatever it may be that can't be managed that way. Maybe it's a different way to manage it.
So first of all, we address the identity and the attestation of the identity very closely. We use Spiffy as the base of our attestation technology, right? So this is already proven in battle and has been widely used. internally, as we discussed before. But we use that as a way to attest the identity. So first of all, to check what is the machine, and this goes to a variety of ways of doing the attestation. But this problem is already solved by Spiffy, which is great, and it's already available. The second part of it is to pair through a policy to pair the right key for that identity. And on top of doing that, we can also put some conditional access into it, right? So, for example, is the machine compromised? We can take that information from other vendors like CrowdStrike or Wiz or Orca. So we know if that workload is coming from a machine that is okay, green lighted, or maybe the other way around, it's been compromised. We don't want to allow it to access sensitive data. We can take other conditional access rules like the time of day, the geography, the IPs, and so forth. And so we are kind of we are building a very strong identity and then adding some conditional access rules. And then after that, we've kind of elevated all of the security several notches up already.
When we talk about the product itself, right, Hush, and I think about machine identity management, it has a bunch of different components to it. There's the account lifecycle, authentication, right, authorization, logging, kind of everything that goes along with it. Does this cover all of that, or are there areas that you tend to focus on specifically, or maybe it doesn't matter depending on the data you can get, I would assume, right? Maybe there's more data for a cloud platform versus maybe an on-premise platform. Speak to me a little bit about when we talk about machine identity management, like what are the areas that we're specifically covering here?
I think there's definitely differences between cloud, which is a lot more modern and structured and systematic than legacy system like on-prem, vSphere, and so forth. In the cloud, and definitely in modern environment like Kubernetes, we've got a lot of information, a lot of attributes, a lot of identity hints that we can use, and we leverage that. And that kind of tends to go down as you go into the older stuff, right? And so if it's a virtual machine, then we use a different set of attributes. If it's going to on-prem and virtual machines that are there, we have a different way of dealing with that. So it gets better as the environment is more modern. And we typically work a lot faster and better there, but we do support legacy environments as well. Yeah. To your questions about authentication and authorization and so forth, so we cover most of those layers in one way or another. So first of all, authentication for sure, because we are the facilitator of authentication. And we can also cover some aspects of authorization because we can provide different keys with different scopes for each one of those workloads. So we cover an aspect of that as well. Yeah, I'm sorry, there was another part to that question. I missed it.
No, I think you cover it all. I think it boils down to data, right? How much data can we get for this stuff? And maybe that is that a minimum bar to be able to utilize a platform like this? Do I need a certain level of data for this to run, or can this run in like a simple vaulting format where, as much as we, dump down on it, sometimes there is some value at least having some sort of shared vault?
So no minimum here. As long as you have one workload, it could be as simple as a script, running in Bash or Python that is trying to access another machine. We will see that and we will address that, and we can control the way that it's done. We can govern that, and we can give it, apply the right identity to it and the right secret. And if it's allowed, we will let it pass. Then it could be as complex as a very complex environment with multiple clusters of Kubernetes and databases and interconnects on top of meshes, like MTLS and so forth. Basically, we are agnostic to that. At the end of the day, we are looking at very strongly the identity of the caller, and then the service they're trying to access, and we find and match the right key to it if it's allowed.
Micha, I'm kind of wondering how your clients are to measure success. In other words, how do they know that they're succeeding? And then, of course, how do they communicate that to the leaders of their organization that the money's being well spent? We're actually making progress, and what is progress? What does progress look like? What does success look like?
So first of all, visibility. For the first time, they have an entire view of all their environments and the way that secret is being consumed and used. Basically, success looks like lower time to remediate, less incident, full auditability, and basically the ability to create additional and new at scale workload that are accessing and trusting other machines. So basically, machine access at scale, very, very easy compared to how it's done today, which is cumbersome, labor intensive, and very risky.
So continuing on with the kind of the thread that Jeff was pulling on, the how. How do I take Hush Security and roll it out in my organization? Like, where do people start? What is the first building block, and then where do they take it from there?
I used to say to the customers, when you have the right people in the room, then it's very easy to do it, right? You need the guys with the permission to the infrastructure, to the SaaS that you have, and if you have all those guys, lined up, which is sometimes hard to do in very big enterprises, then it's very easy. You can connect whatever we do, the connectors that we have to your SaaS, to your IaaS, to your infrastructure, to your databases. And we start scanning everything. Minutes after that, you already have very good results. So the initial scanning. Then to deploy the runtime technology, again, it kind of depends on the environment, but basically you're deploying a sensor. So it's very easy in some environments like Kubernetes. In other environments like VMs or compute, there's a different approach to that. A lot of ways to do it. Some of them easy, some of them a little less. And once you do that, once you deploy everything, then you start seeing the real picture kind of taking place. And this is very dependent on the size of your operation, right? And so, for example, if there's an authentication event that happens only once a month because you're rendering like a monthly digest, then you need to wait for that monthly event to occur. But all the other stuff, millions of other authentication events that are happening every minute, you will start seeing those right away. And that will be the initial start of the process, where you see the report and you see the posture and everything that you need to know from the discovery phase. And then on top of that, moving into the policies, and just there is nothing else to do after that. It's basically to sit and wait for any alerts to come your way, seeing that someone is actually doing something that they shouldn't.
Let's pick on that a little bit. So you used a very interesting word to me, which is scanning. So you're scanning the environment. When you're scanning the environment, what are you looking for?
I'm looking basically for every machine that is talking to another machine, and within that, what secret is being used when they talk. Right, and so basically, it's a combination of scanning and monitoring. We do some agent scanning, so we scan your code base, for example, your Git repository, right? So we want to know if you put any hard-coded secret there. So this is scanning your collaboration app like Jira and Teams and Slack and so forth. But we also monitor and observe. So that's the runtime part of what we do. We look at every authentication event that happens. We look at the identity of the caller. We look at the identity of the service that they are calling, and we are creating the map of everything that happens basically around that. Coupling that with the metadata coming from the agentless scanning, we get a very, very distilled inventory with all the right information in it.
That's very interesting. So I could totally get what you're saying now with visibility, and you have a good picture of what's going on, and you start to identify where you have weaker controls from an identity and access perspective. Now you can report on that. What else can you do? Like eventually the practitioner has to go about remediating that, right? So what's the approach then? Is that like the next level within the Hush platform?
Yeah. So some of our customers, they only interested in the discovery part, right? Some CISO, they say, I just want to know where I am. I want to make sure there are no risks, or if there are, I want to remediate them. But my argument, and I think Felix made a very similar argument when you was on your podcast, is that using those kind of keys and NHIs, this is the wrong way because of the scale of where they are today. Just trying to chase and remediate the stuff that you have is not scalable, and it's definitely not a way to build a complex environment like today. And so we do have that part as well, and we give that, and where some of our customers, this is where they are. But what Hush is really doing, and how we really want to change the way that software is being done, is that we want to move you away from needing to remediate that, because once you don't use NHI or static keys anymore, you just use policies, then everything, all the risks attached to those NHIs is going away with it. And that is the narrative, that is the vision that we are bringing to the market and to the industry. And I think there's one sentence that Felix said that kind of struck me very well. It was kind of funny. He said, "Friends don't let friends use NHIs." Right? Like this is not the way you want to go. You need to move, the way that you think about software and the way that you manage access.
Yeah, normally I book our guests, but Jeff hit a grand slam with getting Felix on the podcast, and that's definitely one that got a lot of attention. With all that said, the visibility, it does seem like, look, I mean, I get the CISO perspective of, just give me visibility, because I think it's very hard to solve a problem when you don't know what the problem is. But then you've got this next level of actually remediating the problem. Going back to my earlier questions about how do we communicate our success in the organization, given those factors, given all of that, can we attach, metrics to any of that? Can we set long-term goals and then show progress towards those in terms of OKRs and things like that? Seems to me like that's goals and objectives, and hitting those. That's the language of the C-suite, 2.0, if you will, or that's what people are talking today about, which is objectives. It seems to me that all this data that you're creating, this visibility, this ability to remediate and progress over time, that speaks exactly to achieving those objectives.
I think that's spot on. Eventually the C-level, they want to see, some kind of KPIs, right? And how do you achieve them? And so things like, fixing the problems, like reducing the time to fix an incident, that's definitely something you want to do. The time for fixing an identity-related breach, I think I read somewhere, is around 40 days. So you have a problem, you need to fix that. That takes 40 days. In the way that we envision non-human identity future is that you don't have that time, because you're not even using the same language or the same construct to manage it. So you want to reduce that to zero. You want to reduce the number of incidents that you have. And of course, you need to improve the posture and reduce the risk that you have within your environment. So the first thing, for example, that we do, we scan everything and we show you the amount of risk that you have. For example, you have a key that is being used in hundreds of or tens or hundreds of environments, and we've seen that. And so this is a very big risk, because if one of those environments get compromised, that means that all of your infrastructure get compromised. So we show you that, and we show you very easily how you can overcome that and remediate that if this is on or what you want, or move to a parallel system where those risks doesn't exist at all.
Jeff and I are identity practitioners at heart, and I think all this data, having it might cause some sleepless nights, but what'll really cause a sleepless night is knowing you have a problem, but not knowing how big the problem is.
Yeah.
That will just give you anxiety. So, I mean, listening to everything we've talked about, I think there are a lot of our listeners who are interested. They want to learn more. How do they learn more?
Definitely using the link that you can provide, going into hush.security, sending us a notes, pinging us on LinkedIn, many ways to come to us. We have a great go-to-market team. We'll be happy to jump on a call, explain and walk through the solution, and also give some free assessments so we can check the posture, of what they have today, and just for them to see what are the risks that are lurking in their environment. And it's so often that we go into a call and the other, the guy on the other side said, no, we are completely, very hygiene here. We keep everything in the vault. Nothing is out. We know where everything is. And then you scan it, and they're like, okay, so maybe I don't know where everything is. And I used to say at the beginning of the journey that I'll give you a bottle of scotch if we don't find anything, as you said. But and I haven't given any bottle for the last year within this journey.
Well, I'll take a bottle of scotch. I don't really have an environment for you to scan per se, but I know that you guys are setting up a URL hush.security/idac, like the podcast name. I know you're going to have something out there. I don't know if you want to reveal what that's going to be now, but if folks go out there will be something that they can get started with, right?
Absolutely. So whenever you reach out to us and through this link, we can jump on a call and we can have our team give you a complete assessment of your NHI posture, and happy to take it on.
Awesome. Now, do you guys do the conference circuit?
We will. We're studying with Gartner IIM conference in December. We've got some other ones lined up as well.
Well, we'll definitely see you in Gartner, so that'll be a good time to get the official fist bump of gratitude for being on with us. So, Micha, this has been the easy part of the podcast. The hard part is now. I have a very challenging question for you, and that is pancakes or waffles?
Pancakes or waffles? Definitely pancakes without hesitation. This kind of a childhood memory, right? Yeah, without hesitation. I'm seeing my mom, it's the weekend in the mornings. I wake up, she serves up some fresh pancakes. What more sweet memory than this you can ask me for, right?
Well, and they're just delicious. So I have thoughts on this, but let me go to Jim first, because I have a feeling he thinks he knows what I would pick. But Jim, pancake or waffles?
I don't think you can go wrong with either one, right? I mean, I'm a huge fan of both pancakes and waffles. But I will say, I do think that waffles are meant as carriers of butter. They serve no other purpose but to put butter in your mouth in large quantities, which
a buttery delivery system.
A butter delivery system. Thank you. I'm going to go with waffles, and I think you're going to say the same because they can be paired with one of your favorite meats.
Yes. So, I'm a big fan of chicken and waffles, but I'm going to shock you, and I'm going to say pancakes. And here's why. It's very difficult to find a good waffle. You can get good pancakes pretty much anywhere. It's much simpler, I think, to prepare. It's more consistent. That's what I'm looking for. But a very good waffle, and I'm more of a Belgian waffle myself. Maybe some bacon bits in it, maybe some walnuts or pecans on top, some syrup, and of course some fried chicken. Chicken and waffles is my favorite. But because it's so hard to get right, I feel like pancakes are a safer bet. But I'm like you. I don't discriminate. I will eat either. The correct answer is both, of course. So we all failed this one. But I'm going to go with pancakes purely just for the consistency factors. I feel like we can get those pretty good anywhere I go. Does that shock you at all, Jim?
No, not actually. Now that you give him the full explanation and you said both was the right answer, I mean, I'm in your lane, man. I will say this: one thing we left out of this whole conversation was, pancakes. Are they buttermilk pancakes? You could get chocolate chip pancakes. You could get blueberry pancakes. I will tell you, I had this experience where I was in Big Sur, California. I mean, one of the most beautiful places that I've been on this earth. And I found this little bed and breakfast kind of place, like just off the side of the road, and they had blueberry pancakes. And one of my projects in retirement is going to be to find this place. There's the best blueberry pancakes I've ever had. Fresh blueberries, and I say the blueberry pancake was 50% pancake and 50% blueberry.
So, Micha, where do you fall on that? Do you like a plain pancake, or do you put things into your pancake like chocolate chips or blueberries? Or
I'm
whatever?
definitely a plain pancake kind of guy. This is the basics. You don't mess with that. You give it. You maybe put some, chocolate on top of it and some ice cream. But the pancake, you need to make it, basic and as it should come.
I'm with you on this one. I am not a chocolate chip pancake, a blueberry pancake. Just give me a good pancake and some nice maple syrup, maybe a little bit of powdered sugar. I like to eat healthy, so if I'm going to have my pancakes, I don't want butter on there. It doesn't need it. I don't need anything else. It's a health food as long as you don't put the butter on it. That's the way that I kind of approach it.
I'm kind of a purist in this, and the same way with security, right? You need to do it the right thing at the right course, and it's the same with pancakes, man.
Yeah, if the product is good enough, you don't need all the other shiny things like chocolate chips and blueberries, etc. Right? It should be a standalone food that can live on its own. Exactly. That's my thought process.
Very well put.
I was okay with what you said. I like you said no butter. And no butter, like we're not friends anymore, Jeff.
It's just too much. It doesn't need it. The butter doesn't really add anything for me. I just need a syrup delivery mechanism, and that's what the pancake is. It's the delivery truck for a nice I'll say like a vanilla maple syrup. That's pretty good. That's what I'd go with.
But Jim, if you do find that B&B, I'd be happy to get that address from you.
Sounds good to me.
I wanted to close out. That was the hardest question. Micha, you passed, by the way, by picking pancakes and a plain pancake to boot. So congratulations. We're going to have links in our show notes, not to pancakes, but to your LinkedIn profile, but also to hush.security/idac, so people can go check that out. Micha, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I think I'm excited, first of all, to talk to you, and I've been listening to you for a while, so it definitely feels like it's surreal in a way. I'm happy for you guys to have me, and I'm excited for the next chapter of Hush and, bringing our mission to the industry and changing the way things are done.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you at Gartner as well and seeing how things progress from there. So we'll go and wrap it up for this week. You can find us on the web at idacpodcast.com. Like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Share with friends, share with enemies. Doesn't matter as long as they're liking, subscribing, watching, or listening. That's all we care about. So with that, we're going to leave it for this week. Thanks for watching and/or listening, and we'll talk with y'all in the next one.
You've been listening to Identity at the Center. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit the website at identityatthecenter.com. See you next time on Identity at the Center.